The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back, talking ball, comfortably zoned. I have David Hubler, Ron Rabinovich, Chad Rubin, and George Case. What a morning. How you doing, gentlemen?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
All right.
Good morning.
One more voice. All right, that voice is coming. I'm Ralph Tycho with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we're going to talk a little ball. We've been talking off the air a little bit, and something that George Case was talking about really struck a chord. Ball players are more skilled, more athletic, better nutrition, all of these things than they were in the 50s and 60s. And we were there in the 50s and 60s and watched these players. And you know what? He's absolutely right. And he's also absolutely right when he says that players today may be more skilled, more proficient, and what have you, but they lack the fundamentals. And I think I have an answer to his question. He's correct. They do lack the fundamentals, but one of the reasons they lack the fundamentals is they're not rewarded for bunting, getting the runner over, etc. George, would you agree on that?
Yeah, I sure would, Ralph. And what I was really mentioning before is the fact that, I think it's almost impossible to compare eras because the players today are definitely more skilled, they're faster, they're bigger, stronger. But my opinion, because today they're playing what's called long ball versus in the past many teams had to play small ball where you had to rely on the leadoff man getting on base, dancing to second, whether it be on a stolen base or a walk or whatever it is, and then the next batter hitting behind him to possibly score. And we say hitting behind him, that would be, if the guy's on second base, you're going to try to hit the ball to right field, so the right fielder will have a much longer throw than the left fielder if you hit it to the left side. So that's hitting behind the runner. And my opinion is that that's one of the skills, the fundamental skills, because everybody is trying to hit one out today. Or when you have a situation where somebody needs to know how to bunt, and I've seen so many bunts go crazy. They get popped up, they get missed, they get all that kind of stuff because the players today are not playing pepper. They're really not learning how to bunt. And pitchers, because of the DH in the American League, they never have to hit anymore until they play an interleague game, where in the past, a lot of the really good hitting pitchers, they would help themselves. If they had to advance a runner, they knew how to bunt. If they could hit a ball, they would hit. And you had guys that were excellent pitchers, but they were also outstanding hitters. And today, I think you still have a few in the National League, but in the American League, because of the DH, you virtually have no pitchers hitting unless there's interleague. So that's my whole thing about baseball today versus baseball, for years ago. I think the skill level is such. I've seen the acrobatic skills, the stuff that they're doing in baseball today is incredible. But on the other hand, I've also seen base running blunders. I've seen outfielders thrown to the wrong base. I see, guys that just don't know how to bunt, and they get up there and they're waving the bat and they're doing all kinds of nutty stuff because nobody ever taught them. And that's what I think is lacking today, is that the teaching skills that were passed down from one generation to another in professional baseball are totally lacking today.
Right.
Okay,
George and Ralph, I think Al's on the line with us.
Hey, Al Clark, how are you, sir?
I am doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. George Case is here, David Hubler is here, Chad Rubin is here, and Ronnie Rabinovich is here, and me, the weak link of it all.
Well, it's good to chat with all you guys, for sure.
It's good to have you on again, Al. That's great.
Al, I just want to complete one thing and ask George a question about what he was talking about. would players be more apt to learn to bunt if they were rewarded for those skills at the negotiating table? And if intangibles in general, an Eddie Stanky, for instance, would be appreciated in today's day and age, would they be more apt to develop those skills?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think Al could maybe want to jump in here. But my opinion, because the money is so big today that players are saying, hey, I get paid to hit home runs or whatever. I'm not getting paid to bunt a ball, and I just feel that that's the way. Where in the old days, guys were very happy to be playing for whatever they were getting paid, which was minimal compared to what they make today. But they were very team oriented because they worked with these guys every day. They were with them, just like Al was talking about, umpires as a team. They travel together. They work together. Well, in the old days, baseball players, they did. They traveled together. They were on the trains together. They were in the clubhouses together. Today they're making so much money, and the time travel is virtually done now by airplane. They really don't have roommates, I don't think, anymore in the major leagues. They're all in suites or whatever. So I think that they have lost a certain amount of the camaraderie and working with the coaches and really practicing their skills. And again, this is just my opinion when I'm looking out today and see, the great players, but I don't see a lot of the great fundamentally sound players that used to be. And Al, maybe you want to jump in there. You've been a lot closer to it than I have from an umpire's point of view. But what's your take on it?
George, I think you're spot on a couple of things that you've just indicated. Number one, fundamentals in the game today are a thing of the past. Number two, I don't think that guys are as interested in the fundamentals because all the money that's involved. I mean, guys are not paid to move runners on. Guys are paid to hit, balls out of the ballpark, which comes to mind, I don't remember who said it, but one of the big hitters said, perhaps it was Mickey Mantle, he said, home run hitters drive Cadillacs, singles hitters drive Chevys. And it can be manifested a little bit better in today's game. Plus the fact, I think you're right about the comradeship, if you will, an invented word there. It's not about the team winning anymore, even though that's the overall said, goal. It's all about how much can I make, how soon. And if that weren't the case, then why does everybody try to get to free agency as quickly as they do?
Al, they were very interesting comments, and I agree with that. And, it's just that to me, it's a different era. And what you're saying, guys they're being paid to hit home runs and score, and the teams, they have to win. But on the other hand, I know that in the old days, the guys used to pick up the sporting news every day to see what their batting average was or whatever it is. Today, because of the instantaneous aspect of cable and all that kind of stuff, they look and they want to see, hey, I look great hitting that one out today. And, it's to me.
Well, you talk about fundamentals, guys. You talk about fundamentals, and in today's world, if you watch TV, no one swings level at the ball. Everyone wants to uppercut. Pitchers don't pitch to location anymore. They pitch and throw as hard as they can. That 98 mile an hour fastball is common today, whereas it wasn't before. And another thing about fundamentals, I remember I can certainly recall talking to hitting coaches about how they teach hitters to move runners on. And to a right-handed hitter, when was the last time you heard an interpretation of how to hit a ball to the right side of the infield by throwing your hands at the pitch first? And then, of course, the barrel of the bag lags back, and it makes contact with the ball, and it hits it to the right side. That's a thing of the past. I've never heard. I've never heard. I don't hear those guys talk about that kind of strategy at all anymore.
Right.
May I ask you this, Al Clark? Famous
Yes,
American
sir.
League umpire, first Jew boy to umpire in the American League, and the last Jew boy to umpire in the American League. Fellow Jew boy, I might add. Is the same about fundamentals true with umpires as with ball players?
I think that's a great question. In today's world, all the umpires in the big leagues, except the older guys, no one has any individual personality. Umpires umpire today, just like NBA referee and NFL officials officiate. Everyone is taught to do everything the same way, quite vanilla. And in my day and days before mine, you had, the Dutch Rennerts and the Lee Wyers and the John McSherrys, where you could just take a look at them or even listen on TV, and you knew who was there. In today's world, I was watching a ball game last night on television. I couldn't tell you the fellow who was working behind home plate one from another because everybody does everything the same way. And I think our game loses something by not having some personality out there on the field, the third team on the field, having, just being a little different, adding something to the game.
Right. I agree with you.
Okay. Do you think that there are positive things since you've umpired that have come into play as well?
Oh, yeah, sure I do. I think the instant replay is a good thing. Technology is not going away, and if it can be used to make our game better, then I think by all means it should be used, as long as it doesn't interfere with the human element. I think that the overall idea of the official, the umpire, is to get as many plays and situations correct as he possibly can. And if electronics can help to a certain extent, I think they certainly should be utilized. That's going to make our game better. Other than that, I don't know. I'm not privy to what goes on in the inner circle anymore. And I've got an opinion just like everybody else, but I don't think that if you take the human element out of calling balls and strikes, it certainly takes something away from the game. Back in the day, take the Atlanta pitchers and many of them and the way that they pitched to locations, not overpowering hitters, but helping to create their own strike zones with consistency. And that was a big deal in my age, in the years that I worked. If a pitcher was consistent, well, all of a sudden, umpires became pitchers, umpires. And guys had to swing at that pitch that was perhaps an inch and a half off the plate. Because, after a while, that pitch looks pretty good. We are not machines back there and shouldn't be machines back there, creating that atmosphere in the game.
George
I
mentioned
heard
earlier
Mike Krupkow talking about that in the booth, that if a player gets the outside corner by an inch, he'll want 2 inches, and he'll keep trying as much as the umpire will give him. And
well, that's where the consistency of the umpire and the professionalism of the umpire comes into play. I remember Catfish Hunter as a young umpire pitching, to me when I was behind the plate. All of a sudden I realized he was not pitching to the hitter. He was pitching to me to see how far I would go. That's how good Catfish was. Incidentally, the best pitcher I ever saw, the best control pitcher I ever saw, was Catfish Hunter. And he got to a certain point, an inch or so off the plate, and he went farther than that, and I called the pitch a ball, and he went right back to that inch off the plate that I called a strike. And that's where he lived when I was behind the plate for a long time.
So he was testing you on one level or another. Does an umpire test a rookie? Is that or just
no? That's a fallacy. That is a tremendous fallacy of the writers and talking heads. We've got a job to do, and we want to be right as much as we possibly can. I want our game to be as good as it can be. And I don't care, about if a guy is a rookie or if a guy is a 10 or 15-year vet. I'm going to do the best job I can with as much integrity as I can on the field, regardless of what the guy's name is or what number he wears.
Okay. Al, the real reason we have you on the show is because you're from Trenton.
Of course.
That's the only reason he's got me on the show too, right?
Right.
And you missed Mr. Siegel, who was here last week, and who will be back. And I'm hoping to get the three of you guys, Trenton guys, together. And we'll put you with somebody who doesn't stutter. That would be great too.
That would be great.
Yeah, we'll have to look for that. He wouldn't be at 908 Lincoln Avenue in Alameda. Okay,
right.
Just the way it goes. But I'd like the three of you to get together. George, would you and Al reminisce about Trenton? It's a city in New Jersey for those of you in India or Indonesia, Asia listening to this from all over the world. Talk about your days growing up in Trenton, if you will.
Okay, well, I'll start, and then Al can certainly jump in here. But I grew up. I was born in 1940, and in 1940, in the early 40s, early 50s, Trenton, and we say Trenton, but as Al will tell you, people in the Trenton area say Trenton, and that's the accent that we have. And but it was always a great baseball town. It was a terrific, vital, vibrant city. It's not that way today anymore, unfortunately, but many years ago it was also a terrific baseball town. And Al and I have talked about it. Al, his dad was a sports writer, and my dad being a ball player, and Al Downing from Trenton, and Belinsky, and Dave Gallagher and Stevie Braun. I mean, there's been quite a few major league ball players from the Trenton area. And
Wayne Princicchi also.
Right, and the fact is that baseball and Trenton were synonymous for many years as to being a hotbed of amateur baseball. And then when Willie Mays, one of the greatest of all time, was on his way up the ladder to the New York Giants, he played, minor league baseball in Trenton. So, my opinion, I'm sort of a person who loves the area, always have loved the area, lived here all my life. But I always loved Trenton because of the baseball and the history. I mean, dated back to before the Revolutionary War. But the fact that the current, game of baseball was played many, many years ago. Babe Ruth and Gehrig, they barnstormed in Trenton. So, it had a tremendous history, and Al was certainly a part of it, and I'm, really happy he's on, and we can talk about it. And Al, I wanted to mention to you that we told Tony Sigel last week your story about the Astrodome, and he just laughed.
Is that right?
About the scoreboard. He just laughed about it.
Listen, let's not forget Chris Patero as well.
Yeah, that's right. Chris Patero.
Yes.
Sonny played his dad. Sonny played in the Dodger organization. And Tony Sigel, I mean, he may have laughed about it, but that's a great baseball story, about how Tony was in the Navy and Bill Giles was in Houston at the time, and Tony had some public relations skills, some computer skills, and that's the genesis of how the scoreboard got lit up, really, with Tony Sigel.
That is a great story. That is a great story. What was the first day, Al, that you decided to be an umpire, or you went, wow, this could be for me?
Well, the stock or wise guy answer is that when I realized it was easier to call a curveball rather than hit one, I became an umpire.
But hey, Al, I could never hit one. That's why I talk about baseball, but I couldn't hit one either.
Plus the fact I was a weak-armed catcher at Ewing High School in Trenton, and that didn't add to my ability to wanting to play, baseball going forward. No,
Al,
but it's just.
Al, did you umpire at all in the Trenton area when you were younger?
Oh my goodness, yes. I started when I was 16 years old in the Delaware Valley Umpires Association.
Okay.
With local stalwarts like Walt Johnson and Tony Mashern and Joe Courtney and all those names that are
Right.
very familiar with Trenton baseball aficionados. And then I loved it, and I did it all through college, and then I got out of college and I taught for a year. I did not necessarily enjoy that. I wrote for a year. I did enjoy that, but I wanted to eat steaks instead of hamburgers the rest of my life. Decided to take a chance, went to umpire school, and 4 years later I was in the American League.
Well, that's a quick rise. That doesn't happen in today's day and age, does it?
No. In today's day and age, in today's world, an umpire has to spend about 10 years in the minor leagues before he gets a shot, if he gets a shot at the big leagues.
Really?
Right.
That long?
And if you want to talk about what every other human being looks for in a job, a 401k, a pension plan and stuff, minor league umpires, minor league players, George can speak to the players, Al speaks to the umpires. Are they compensated at all worth a fiddler's chances?
Well, where the umpires are concerned, it's a little bit better than when I was in the minor leagues a long, long time ago. But, the pie in the sky is the big leagues. No one aspires to be a minor league umpire forever. That's not your career goal. Your career goal is, of course, to get to the big leagues. And
yeah, but you're
talking
10 years, and some spend 10 years and don't get to the big leagues.
Many do, of course. And you hope that you're not looked upon as just a number.
Along the way for the A for efforts, the people that give it the best shot and don't succeed need not be treated. Need to be treated.
Well, unfortunately, Zig, it's a business. And people are needed, and sometimes we, whether they be umpires or players, need to fill out rosters. And we are looked upon by the powers in baseball as just meat. And you got to put somebody out there, somebody with a little bit of talent that you know is not going to matriculate to their goals, but you still need them anyway. It's unfair. It's not a nice thing to do, but it is a business, and it's a cold, cruel business, just like many others.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100% with you, Al. Al, I can only tell you, and Ralph and David and Chad and Ronnie, it is a business. There are teams, and they call the players organizational players. They're filling slots in the organization. I remember, and we had this gentleman on with us a few months ago. My dad was, when he was coaching up in Oneonta, which was short season A, he had to tell one of his players, he said, Eddie, this is as far as you're going to go. And my advice to you is to, go into coaching because you got a great baseball mind. And this person told me personally, he said that was a tough pill for him to swallow. But on the other hand, it was the best advice he ever had because he wound up coaching high school baseball for like 30 years, winning all kinds of state championships. And he really, credited with my dad to give him the right advice rather than saying, hey, stick it out, see if you can move up in the organization. Because my father would rather be honest with him and say, Eddie, your skill level, this is where it is. And it turned out to be the best thing for everybody.
Hey,
tough pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Al, George is too modest to answer this question in any way that would satisfy what I want to hear. How cool must have it been to have a George Case Jr., super major league player, living in the same town, communicating, having a sporting goods store, same town as you live in as a kid growing up, and that was Trenton, New Jersey.
Zig, it was absolutely tremendous.
Legend.
It was absolutely tremendous. I mean, George had a tremendous reputation as a player, as a person. He was interviewed all the time, at least once or twice a year, by the Trenton newspapers and on the radio many, many times. And it was somebody that we aspired to be, we looked up to him. I mean, he was where we wanted to be. He was who we wanted to be. And my goodness gracious, what could be better than that? He was always on our minds. He was there. He was an idol. I mean, my goodness gracious. And he lived in our area. And he was visible. And it was cool. It was ridiculously cool.
Al, I appreciate you saying all that, and I can tell you from a point of view, and I've said this to many people, I learned as much about baseball, my knowledge today, just being around my dad and hearing him talk and going to dinners and sitting in the living room and watching a ball game and talking baseball, going in the backyard, having a catch. He always would say to me, if you want me to help you with something, let me know, but I'm not going to push anything on you. And he used to say to me, he said, if you never picked up a bat and ball in the rest of your life, he said, I'd love you anyhow. You're my son. He said, you don't have to be a ball player. I just happened to love the game. I had the same name. I played in the same area. I used to go out on the field and somebody say, hey, are you George's son? And I say, yeah, I am. He said, oh, man, let me tell you about your father. I mean, that's what I heard growing up from the fact that I was about 10, 11, 12 years old playing Little League Baseball. So it was a wonderful experience for me. And I appreciated it. I had times when I was very frustrated because I used to say to him, I said, Pop, I just can't play like you played. He said, well, you're different. I was a bigger guy. I was more of a home power hitter, and my dad used to laugh. He said, yeah, you're stronger than I am, but let's go out and have a race. and I just said, Pop, I know the outcome of the race is not going to be favorable for me.
What you're saying about that osmosis thing, George, is so right. I've got friends here in beautiful Colonial Williamsburg that are baseball fans, and I go out and I watch the William and Mary baseball team, and I watch the Norfolk Tides, and I go into Richmond to watch the Richmond Flying Squirrels, and they ask me if they can go with me to listen to how I watch a baseball game. Because I see different things out there than a regular fan perhaps does. And it's new and it's interesting and it's a different point of view. It's all out there on the field, except I see it differently. And the people, the fans of baseball, want to hear how I watch a baseball game. And that's pretty interesting. And that's exactly what you're saying about going to a ballpark with your dad or listening to him at a banquet.
Right.
You've heard things and learned things that only he could teach, and you wouldn't see them otherwise, or you wouldn't hear them otherwise. And that in itself is really learning our game from the inside out.
Well,
George,
Al, and you're right about that, and I can
because we live in the world
I can tell
you. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I can tell you, Al, for a fact, and Ralph, I learned how to play baseball probably when I was, 7, 8, 9 years old. I knew how to run, I knew how to throw, I knew how to hit. I eventually got, more skilled as I got older. But the inside part of it, the little tiny nuances and all that kind of stuff, what you're talking about, Al, I learned that. I mean, I learned it just by sitting in the living room talking with my father about baseball, about how you play.
Whoa.
And he'd see somebody and he'd say, now look at that and look at that. And that's how he would teach me. And, if the little subtle things about when he was a base runner, he knew the pitcher's moves, he knew the catcher's moves, he knew the situations, all that kind of stuff. And he wasn't a home run hitter. His job as a leadoff guy was to get on base, and he used to tell me that all the time. He'd say, now look, he said, that leadoff guy, he's got to get on. That's his job. Now the next guy up his job is to move that guy over. And that's how you
That's
learn.
right.
What you were talking about, Al, hitting behind a runner. I mean, I learned that, my gosh, I might have been 10, 11 years old. Now, he didn't tell me to get my hands out with the barrel, but he would just say, hey, your job is to move that runner, so you're going to hit behind him. Don't
Well, that instruction is baseball 101, But how to do it is baseball 201 and 301.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yep.
So that's it. That's what it's about. That's how we learned our game, and that's how others learn from us, by listening, by hearing, by being in our presence.
Right.
Who was your first umpiring hero when you started really getting into umpiring? Who did you admire, Al?
Gosh, I don't know. That's a great question, Sid. I don't know, anybody that was in the big leagues, I would imagine, and I tried to learn, everybody and all the nuances, and tried to pick and pull, learning how they handle situations, how I could become better, how I could emulate them and be as good as they were, or try and be as good as they were by learning their nuances, not only positioning and mechanics, but also demeanor and maturity. I think those things are so very important in controlling a game every day on the field. And those are things that I look for. I've had two idols in my life, really. One was my dad, and the other was Al Downing. And Al, of course, was from Trenton, and I knew him as a young boy. He's a couple of years older than I am, and I had the unbelievable fortune, and it was a heady type situation. Al was trying to hang on with the Cincinnati Reds in his last year, and they were playing the Orioles in the old Miami Stadium during spring training, and I was behind the plate. And I actually got to work a couple of innings of Al Downing pitching on the mound. And can you imagine? I mean, I kept a scrapbook on this guy, and he used to communicate with him, and he was my pen pal, for crying out loud. And here I am, umpiring a big league spring training meeting with him on the mound. But other than that, I learned to respect many, many umpires, but I don't know if any one was an absolute hero.
Okay.
Hey, Al, can I ask you one thing? Maybe you don't even know, but when my dad was playing in the earlier years, in the 20s and 30s and that kind of thing, a lot of umpires, I shouldn't say a lot, but some umpires have been former ball players themselves. Now, do you know of any umpires when you were umpiring that had been a former major league player or professional player, before they went into umpiring?
I worked with one, a fellow by the name of Bill Kunkel. He pitched in Kansas City and New York. And he used to counsel us on the attitude of the players. And we learned an awful lot from Bill, actually a New Jersey guy also. He lived down the shore. But we learned a lot about the attitude from the inside of what a player is thinking and what a player thinks of umpires and that kind of thing, which was proved to be very beneficial.
No, I was just curious about that because, when my dad was playing and before, I mean, some of the umpires, had a tremendous reputation as players, but then it carried over into their umpiring, and I think that they did present themselves and maybe, teach the other umpires a little bit about the psyche of a ball player because, as you know, it's a little bit, some of them are wonderful, but some of them are really high-strung, and you got to be able to deal with them.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And we did. We picked Kunkel's brain, many times about that kind of thing, about the competitive spirit of the ball player.
Al, both you and George have in common that your dads are your heroes. Did you ever, as kids, ask your dads in a real serious tone, Dad, why can't we be New Yorkers?
Well, my dad grew up in New York, and no, I never asked him that. That would be like Ronnie. No, that would be like Ronnie asking Jackie Robinson, why aren't I a Southern California guy, or why aren't I why don't I live in Brooklyn?
Okay. I just thought you'd get my needle a little bit about me being a New Yorker.
Well, no, that's a good, Ralph, that's a good needle. Al and I benefited because the fact that we lived in Trenton and a lot of the people in Trenton, I mean, they follow the Yankees or the Giants or the Dodgers when they were in New York. So, I mean, we knew about it, but we were very happy to be from the Trenton area because we benefited from it.
I'm sure you were very happy to be from the Trenton area, George. I just got to tell you, all these months we've been doing this, just got to tell you, you weren't a New Yorker. Okay.
Al and I talk. Hey, Al, you and I don't talk like these New Yorker guys. Anything else?
That's true.
Much better.
That's true. David Hubler, did I amuse you, Mr.
Yes.
New Yorker?
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
that's all I live for. You know me. Hey, listen, this was a great episode. I enjoy your company, all of you. Chad, we didn't hear much from you. Anything you want to ask Mr. Clark, Mr. Case, Mr. Hubler, or Mr. Rabinowitz? Vitz. All right.
Well, let me add one thing. I saw a piece, program that Ron did just recently from the Angel Stadium with a group of youngsters, and I watched the whole thing. Ron talking about, of course, the great Jack Robinson and how he was his idol, his friend, of course. And it was quite enthralling, and I enjoyed the program by Ronnie very, very much. The love and the respect that he has for Jackie Robinson, a very worthwhile watch.
Okay, but
Thank
let
you.
me put everything into perspective. Ronnie's dad was Jackie Robinson's idol. So
There you go.
Absolutely. Everybody's skilled in different ways. Everybody has different talents. And the one talent Jackie Robinson had was his mindset of life not well spent, giving back is a worthless one. And George has that mindset. You have that mindset, Al Clark. No, Ronnie has that mindset. And David has that mindset. So I'm in good company today. I really enjoyed this. This is terrific for me. Thank you, John.
I'm glad to be with you guys again for sure.
Please.
Thank you, Ralph. And Al, it's always good to talk to you and David and Chad and Ronnie and Ralph. This is fun for me to talk baseball and I look forward to it every week. And Al, good luck to you and everything. And
George,
and
we don't often use that word, but the word is fun, and it is imperative that if it ain't fun, it shouldn't be getting done. We don't have much time. Better be fun. Okay, guys. David, at the bottom of the hour, as it were.
Yep. Speak to you then.
Okay, and if you're out there listening and you enjoy our offerings, everybody, would you please be kind enough to box up some lightly used children's books and take them to the Head Start program in the community in which you live? Generally, I explain why, but I'm going to leave it to you. Why do you suppose you should take books down to Head Start? It's your duty and to decide what the reasons are this week. I'll see you next week, everybody. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.